Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. It's going to be cold for the next few days, so I've got some inside projects to do. One of them is butter. This is not normally a butter time of year for me, but we've actually been using a lot of lard this year, so the butter that we were able to make throughout the dairy season last year, which is, you know, spring and summertime, it has lasted a really long time. I have purchased some store-bought butter for different projects and for things like Christmas cookies where I know I wanted to use a lot of butter, but this is the last of our goat's butter that I have right now. I've shown our butter making process on the channel before, but I've changed things up a little bit. This butter is actually better than a lot of the butters that I've made in the past. It's a lot more firm. See here, this is room temperature. It's just, it holds up a lot like the butter from the store. Now, if you are not aware, we have goats for dairy and not cows, and it is difficult to get a good amount of butter out of your goats. And that is only because goat's milk is naturally homogenized, and it will separate into some cream on the top and then the milk on the bottom. It never fully separates. The milk that's left on the bottom still has a little bit of cream content, but if you wait long enough, you can dip a ladle into your jar and get off a good amount of cream, which is what I did for the cream that's over here. I had quite a lot of milk in the fridge and I dipped off this cream. Now, full disclosure, a lot of times when you let goat's milk sit for several weeks like I did in order to get this cream, it can really taste off. It can really start to taste like a goat hoof. But one of the things that we realized this year was including a cobalt block in our barn for the goats to have free access to really improved the flavor of the milk, and it really made the milk taste fresh for several weeks, well over a month. And being able to let the milk sit for several weeks at a time allows that cream to separate, and it actually tastes good. So if you are experiencing your milk going off kind of quickly, number one, check the temperature of your refrigerator. You want it to be 40 degrees or below, but also consider giving your goats access to cobalt because it really does make a big difference. I have made butter several different ways. My favorite way is using the mixer. I find that I just get a more consistent and reliable result. Woo! I will say that when I don't use the cream separator to get the cream out, when I have just ladled out the cream, I do get a thinner cream, but that's okay. Cream separators are expensive. They're more expensive than a cobalt block. Loose cream is better than no cream, right? And they are kind of a pain in the butt to clean. If I only have a few gallons of milk, I probably am not going to be pulling out the cream separator. I need to make it worth it in order to make that cleanup worth it. Now, in the past, I've been able to do a half gallon of cream at one time and make a minimal amount of mess. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. See that? I just dipped that off of some of our milk that was several weeks old. I'm worried about splashing. See how thick that is? I know the lighting is bad in my house on cloudy days, but I think you can tell how thick that is. It's thicker at the top than at the bottom. I have also heard of people saving up their cream in the freezer until they have enough to process. We have quite a few dairy goats, and in peak season we can pull in several gallons of milk a day. But if you don't have that much and you want to be able to clean out your refrigerator or something of all of the milk and still want to save enough cream to do something like butter with, saving it in the freezer is a viable option. Got my little splash guard here, and I will also need this towel. So I'm just gonna use that. So what I've got going in here right now took me about 20 minutes, maybe even a little bit more to achieve. I will say when I use the cream separator for getting my cream out of my goat's milk, this process does take a lot less time. However, I will say that my cream is also a lot thicker, and so that might contribute. I did start with super cold cream. That cream has been in my refrigerator for probably a week at this point, and right now we have something that looks like cottage cheese, but this is not the separation between the butter and the buttermilk quite yet. When I first started making butter, I thought that we had something going on here as far as butter goes, but no, you need to go a little bit further than this point. This here is not quite butter yet. Sometimes at this point, this is where I will kind of slow down the speed of the mixer, because once it does break into butter, it sloshes around quite a bit more than it does when it first starts. All right, so we've made a mess, but you have to make a mess or it doesn't count. We do have butter, lots of cream sprayed everywhere, totally worth it. Probably a little bit easier to see. This does also still kind of look like cottage cheese at this point, but there's a clear difference between the very loose buttermilk and then if you pick up the butter, it feels and looks like butter. And it tastes like butter instead of just being like a super thick cream. Now, if you're used to eating salted butter, it doesn't taste like salted butter because we haven't added the salt yet. But now we've got to get this buttermilk out of here, which we will save. I have this mesh strainer to help me in case any of the little butter crumbles happen to fall in. I am gonna loosely cover this buttermilk and leave it on the counter for a day or so. I want it to thicken up and culture because that is the best. Now the glass bowl that I use a lot of times, you can see what's going on. It is dirty right now and I'm not gonna clean it, but I'll be able to show you what's going on with the butter paddles at this point. All I'm doing is using these paddles to press down on the butter and squeeze out more buttermilk. Can you see that in there? Right there, there's a lot of buttermilk still in the butter. In the past, I was washing my butter with cool water, but I found that that was what was contributing to my butter not having a nice, thick consistency. It was, I don't know, it was like it was retaining some of that water. I'm not really sure how, but I prefer just squeezing with the butter paddles at this point. Overall, though, I think that goat's butter is softer than cow's butter. Something that I've noticed is that goat's butter is always white, no matter if they are on fresh grass or not. I believe it has to do with how their rumens metabolize B vitamins, but I'm not exactly sure. It might be easier if I kind of cut this in half and did a smaller batch. Oh, I've got a clear bowl here. All right, let's just press, kind of like kneading it in a way, just to get the buttermilk out. I want to say I've seen people pick the butter up with their hands and squeeze using their hands. Totally effective, I'm sure. These are nice. There's something about the grooves that makes the butter not stick and also kind of helps squeeze out that buttermilk. We want to try to get as much of the buttermilk out of the butter as possible because it's going to increase the shelf life of the butter. Usually when I put my butter in that little 8-ounce container, this guy here, I'll freeze it in this. I think this is technically about 2 sticks worth. I'll go through this in about a week, and so it doesn't necessarily have to last super long at room temperature for me. So very often I will have these little watery bits that I do dump out, but it hasn't ever caused a major issue. I've not had my butter go moldy on the counter. If you didn't use your butter as frequently or as often as we do, if you didn't go through it as quickly, you might consider squeezing this out more or storing it in smaller amounts. I'm not great at using both paddles at once, but that's an option. It came with 2. There we go, not too bad. Picking it up and squeezing it allows the buttermilk to drop out. So right here is about the consistency that I look for. There's a little bit of buttermilk sheen on the outside of the butter, and you could use something like a butter muslin to squeeze this even further. Actually, I've never done that. Let's go grab the butter muslin and see how that works. That's nice. It dabs it, you know, and doesn't stick. That is nice. This cloth is cotton, so it's absorbent. It doesn't have any lint or anything. This is a fresh one. I have also seen people hang their butter in this muslin too, but isn't it pretty? That's only half of it from this one batch, and I've got another one to do today. I'm sure that there is a special technique to using butter paddles that I have not mastered yet, but I have really enjoyed using them from the get-go, and I haven't found that my lack of experience has mattered a whole lot as far as the outcome of my butter. It's better than what I used to do as far as washing it underwater. That's for sure. Can only get better with practice, right? This here is actually some cream that I separated in October. It's been in my refrigerator ever since. It's beautiful. Nothing's wrong with it. It has gone sour, so what I have here is sour cream. Could easily dollop this on some tacos or whatever, but I find that this flavor, my mouth is watering thinking about it, this flavor in my butter is so dang good. It's cultured butter at that point, which you can buy at the grocery store at a markup. But if you want it just for yourself, you just leave your cream for longer. And see this. This is cream using the cream separator. It's a very, very thick. The cream separator that I have is very nice. It's called a Slavic Beauty cream separator. At the end of this video and in the description box, I will link my videos that I do have using my cream separator. It is nice, and I'm glad that I have it, especially when I want to quickly empty out my fridge, my dairy fridge, and make some more space, like when we're in the height of milk season and I don't have time to wait for the cream to come to the top. It's great for that, but it's really nice to know that it's not totally necessary in order to get things like butter out of the goat's milk. Alrighty, so I had started with about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 gallons of milk for the amount of cream that I got. When I use my cream separator, I do get more volume, but again, that's not accessible for everybody. I just wanted to give you a baseline or an idea of what I started with. We use just less than a gallon of cream. I'm just gonna tear out my scale so we can see how much butter there is in here, because this was the yield. Isn't it beautiful? So close to 2 pounds. So close. Very happy with that. Now, what I'm gonna do is salt this. I like salted butter, and usually I use about a teaspoon per pound when I am salting my butter. And I think I'm going to not try to do it in this one container. Lovely that is. This is at room temperature at this point. Nice and firm. And that is what I wanted to improve in my butter. So happy with the butter paddles. This here is pink Himalayan salt, and I'm just gonna eyeball it about a teaspoon. Obviously, if you think that sounds like a lot, start with a smaller amount. You can always add more later. Could have done this in my mixing bowl, but oh well. So I do have a cute butter mold that I've used in the past that I do really like. But my favorite way to put the butter away is, as you saw earlier, in these little 8-ounce containers. I do reuse these. Actually, all of these had something like butter or Chev, something like that, in them at one time. Gorgeous. We have it. We have butter out of our goat's milk without a cream separator. I think that there's a lot of value in knowing that this is possible. Now, you have to wait. You have to be willing to wait, willing and able to wait for the cream to come to the top of the goat's milk. And in order for it to not taste like a goat hoof for us, our goats had to be getting enough cobalt in their system. The cobalt in their rumen helps produce adequate amounts of B vitamins, and there's something about that that increases the amount of time that our milk stays good, and plenty of time for the milk to separate for this to be achievable. And honestly, because it's not a complete separation still, that milk that's left behind isn't exactly skim. It does have a richness to it still, so I don't know exactly, but it's probably a little bit like a 2% milk. I said this was about 5 or 6 gallons of milk. I got this butter plus a 6-pound block of farmer's cheese out of that milk. So I thought that was pretty good. I know that when I've made farmer's cheese out of skim milk in the past, milk that I had run through my cream separator, that was not as good. There's something about skim milk in the application where it's just too crumbly. There's not enough fat. There is enough fat when you just ladle off the cream from your goat's milk in order to still get a creamy cheese as well as butter. And there's a lot of value in that. So I took a video last year about this discovery that we had with the cobalt block and the goat's milk just tasting off. Really, it was really bad coming out of the udder of one of our goats. I had taken test samples literally from the udders of the goats and drank it, and thankfully the cobalt was a remedy for our goats. I'll leave that video up here and I'll see you guys again soon.